topics that I would like to talk about are collections of items and script functions, which you're going to need to kind of combine everything that you've learned so far and put it into executable scripts that include functions that you've written. All right, so let's start off first by talking about collections of items. So I've already shown you arrays. So for example, A equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you could access it with something like A bracket 0, and if I were to highlight those items and run the selection with F8, then you can see the things down here that you would expect to see. There's an alternative way of writing things that are arrays, and so I'll make a list of computers here to show that. So I'll say string computers equals, and then I do an @ symbol and then parentheses. So I could leave it blank if I wanted to start an empty one, or I could populate it, and I could say server 1, server 2, server 3, and then I could add to this by saying str computers plus equals, so it looks like traditional programming in that sense, and then @ symbol server 4. And if I ran those two items and then wanted to see the content of that, I hit the little tab there to do an autocomplete. You can see that all those items are listed there. And then if we wanted to, we could just kind of reinforce some of the things that we talked about before. Since these are strings, in this case, they also have a property of length. So I could do for each item that's in this list, $_ dot length. I could print that out. And let's see what happens. Hey, they all seem to have 7. I wonder why that is. It's because they're all the same length of word. But then we could expand on this and give it a little bit more info. So I could say the name is $_ and I could add in the length there. So run it like that. All right. So you get the idea of how we could modify the output. Okay, so that's working with traditional arrays with that @ parenthesis symbol. There's another type of collection which is a hash, which is sometimes called a map or a dictionary in other contexts. So let me write out a new variable and I'll call it emp numbers, so employee numbers. I'm going to say equals @ symbol, so it's starting the same as we did the other thing, except this time we do curly braces. And now we're just going to do name value pairs. So I'm going to say John Doe, and I'm going to say that's equal to 112233. We'll pretend like this is some version of a social security number. And then we're going to separate these not by commas like we did before, but with semicolons. And so the next thing we'll do, Bob Jones, and we'll say that's equal to 223344. And then we'll do another one. We'll call it Mary Jones and make that equal to 334455, and then we will end it. And I will hit F8. So I have loaded that up, and then I will type this out, emp numbers, and hit F8. There we go, and it prints out the name value pairs as well as the columns that are associated with this map currently. Okay, so we might want to know some other things. Let's add in another employee just to show how that would work. Emp numbers, and then I'll add in a new person. I'll call him Davy Jones, and that's going to be 445566, or whatever it ends up being, 77. So it kind of looks like some type of array notation. And if I hit F8, whoops, looks like I've done something wrong. There we go. I didn't quite do that right. Okay. All right, so we all make mistakes. And now if I were to go back up to that row and run this row without highlighting a portion of it, um, now you see that Davy Jones is included in the list. All right, so some other things I can do with my collections. I can name them and then type keys and hit F8, and that shows me all of the keys used in the map. I could also do values, and that would show me the values, which is going to be just what you expect it to be. And I'll hit F8, peachy. All right, and then just to introduce you to another idea, if you were looping through things, you could do for each and then $pair in emp numbers, and then we can call something called get enumerator to pull off each one, and then we could print out, we could reference the pair value as we're looping through each item. So I could do like pair dot key, and that would print it out in this case. So if you needed to do something special as you loop through it, that would be a way to do it. Okay, so with that, let us now move on to the last and very important topic, which is how to create scripts and how to pass parameters to scripts and how to write functions. So let's first off click this little icon up here, and we're going to save it. And if I have to, I'll just write over something else, but I'm going to call it hello world.ps1, hello world.ps1, and hit save. Perfect. Okay, so let's start off by just writing a simple hello message, and I'll say write post, and then in quotes I will say hello, comma, $person. Now there's no variable with that yet, but let's just see what happens. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to say dot backslash, and I'm going to run the command this way. Oh, looks like I didn't mean to call it documents, hello world.ps1, but whatever. Anyway, so I do dot backslash and then the name of the file, and I hit return, and it says hello, comma, and then nothing. So this variable has not been set. What I'd like to do is demonstrate what happens if I pass something in the command line there. So oftentimes when we've been using our commandlets, we pass some parameter to it, and so let's demonstrate how that works. To do that, we type in the word param and then the variable that we want to get set. So if I save that and I run this, and then I will type in my name as something that gets passed in and hit return, and look at that, it got set. If I want to be a little bit more formal about this, I can say that this is a string, and I can also give it a default value. And I'll say, let's just say if you're too afraid to give your name, I'll call you a chicken. And then I will save this again. All right, so I'll run it twice. I'll run it by passing my name, and then I'm going to run it without passing my name. And notice then that it does the default of chicken. All right, so we're off to a fantastic start here. Let's do a little bit more with this. So we just demonstrated passing a parameter. There's another thing that we call a switch, and switches just have true or false values. So if it gets passed, then it's true, and if it doesn't get passed, then it's false. So I'm going to denote something else that is a switch, and I'm going to call this variable I am special. All right. And I'm going to put this in an if statement. So I'm going to say if I am special, and then say write post, I can say you are special. So we're demonstrating the use of switch and an if statement here. So I'll hit save, and I'm going to run this again. It still does the same thing as before, but watch what happens if I hit space and then I hit the hyphen. It knows that one of the parameters there is I am special, or that there's a switch available called I am special. And so I'm going to include that, and it picked it up. You are special. Woohoo! Okay, let's move on to our last item, and just going to give you another attempt at this. Let's create a new script, and we'll call it directory script. So I'm going to say File, Save As. So we're just going to get a little bit more practice with this. Directory script. Yes, I'll go ahead and replace it. All right. So let's set up a challenge here. What I would like to do is I would like to wrap the getChild function in something else. And this is a relatively simplistic task, but imagine that instead of just wrapping one function, or one commandlet, we're wrapping a whole bunch of commandlets that do something important for us. So the way that we could think about scripts is that the first thing we put in is parameters. And by the way, this is a comment in PowerShell. And then we do our functions. And then we do our main body. All right, so the thing that I want to do is have it so when people call this function, it shows a directory listing the same way that getChild does, getChild item. So, all right, so I'll start off with this, getChild item, and I'll go ahead and save it. And now we haven't created any functions yet, but we'll get there. So directory script.ps1, and we run it. All right, fantastic. It does exactly what we wanted it to do. All right. Now, I want to put that in a function. So I'm going to call this function, let's see, show directory. And we precede that with function, and function show directory. And then I will put something in squiggly braces here. And what I'm going to put in there is that commandlet. So it's not very exciting, but I can type in now show directory. And show directory, this newly created function, is going to call the function here that includes that command. So let's go ahead and run it from down here. And I will say directory script.ps1. Uh-oh, I've done something wrong, and that's called I spelled it wrong. All right, so I save it, and I run it again. All right, and it does what I wanted it to do. Okay, now let's expand on this, and I want to make it so that I can pass down here on the command line. I want to be able to pass in a path, and if I pass in a path, it's going to pass it to this function over here. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to set up some parameters. So I say param, and I'm going to say, I'll call it path. All right, and I could make it more complicated than that and say that it's a string. Well, actually, let's go ahead and give it a default space. C drive / will be the default space that I'm going to have it do. Otherwise, it's going to be passed by something in the command line. So I will hit, well, okay. So once I do that, path, when I run this program, path is going to be available, and I could just say show directory path, and it's going to then pass it to this function. I can pick it up by doing it. There's a couple different ways I can do it. One of them is I can recreate this type of syntax and just add it as the second line here right under the word function. Or I can kind of make it look like a regular function. Either one is this, it works fine. So I'll say new path, and then over here I will write new path. So if I pass something into the command line here, it'll, like, let's just say I do C drive / Windows, then it's going to pass it in. When the program runs, it's going to get passed in right there and set to path. Then the body of the program is going to run. It's going to call this function, pass in this variable. That variable gets passed in here, and then this thing is the last thing that gets run. So let me save this and run that program. All right, so that should be the C drive Windows contents. And if I run it without anything, then it just shows the default, which was C drive /. All right, with that, we have done a lot of very important and useful things, and I hope that this helps you on your way to mastering Windows PowerShell. Have a great day.